Today, we're going to talk about interviews, how to ace your interview, how to have a fantastic interview so that you can get that job that you really want and need. So, for us to have a robust conversation, I have an expert guest today, Heidi. I would like to pass it over to Heidi to introduce herself. Heidi, tell us all about
Hi,
yourself.
thank you for having me, Sue. Again, my name is Heidi. I am the owner of a Patrice and Associates specialty recruiting firm, where we particularly specialize in hospitality. But because my background is technology and finance, that's my specialty. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Heidi. So, just to make sure I understand correctly, you own a recruiting slash search firm,
I do, yes, I do.
and your organization help companies that are in the hospitality business, and I assume that means like restaurants, hotels.
Restaurants, hotels, food service companies like Compass Group, Sodexo that have like cafeterias and do like stadium foods, companies like that. We also do construction and finance and technology. My specialty is technology and finance.
Got it. So you are very well versed and experienced on helping people find jobs because you help organization find workers.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
Great. So you are exactly the person we should be talking to today. Um, so let's kind of start with the basic. I have a lot of questions for you, Heidi, but let's start with the sort of the very basic. What is a purpose? What is the purpose? Why do we have job interviews? What's the main purpose of a job interview?
So the purpose of the job interview is kind of twofold, right? Um, Number one, it's the opportunity for the employer to get to know the potential candidate, right? To know whether or not their skills are a good fit, culturally they're a good fit. Um, yeah, yeah, and then but also it's a chance for, and I really want people to understand this, is that it's also a chance for you, the candidate, to interview the company because you want to know that this company fits your goals, your values, and what you're looking for in a place where you want to grow your career.
Absolutely. Got it. So a job interview is really meant for both the employer to see if this is the employee that you want to hire, and this is a chance for the candidate or the potential employee to see if this is the company they really want to work for.
Correct. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I went on an interview and I arrived like 10, 15 minutes early, like you should. Um, and they made me wait. It was probably like 40 minutes.
Mm,
And I left.
mm,
I went to said I have to go. I had another meeting I needed to be in. And they called me in again and they made me wait again,
mm,
and I went through the interview the second time because it was a company that I was really interested in working with. But then I decided, if you treated me like that now, how are you
mm,
going to treat me if I get hired? So I withdrew my candidacy for that reason.
mm. Absolutely, absolutely. Because it tells you a lot about the company that you're
It
going to be
told me a
working
lot
for and the
about them.
way they're treating you as a candidate. Absolutely. So how long do job interviews normally take?
It can be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay,
Most of our candidates we schedule for an hour. Um, but it depends on how the interview goes, right? It could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour. I would plan for no, at least an hour.
got it, got it. So even if they schedule you for 30 minutes, still plan for an hour just in case it
Plan
runs
for an
over.
hour.
Got it. Do you find that most of the interviews nowadays are happening by Zoom, virtually, or in person?
Most of the interviews these days are happening by Zoom. So like a lot of our clients will do the initial interview via Zoom, right? So one of the things I tell people is to make sure you check your technology the night before. Don't try and check your technology and your lighting that morning because you already have enough on your plate trying to get ready for the interview. You don't want to be flustered because you realized your camera's not working, your lighting's not good. Test it the night before.
Got it. Got it. That makes perfect sense because you don't want to spend 10 minutes of your half-hour interview trying to get the camera angle and your sound working and you finding a space where you have some, quiet space. Absolutely. Um, it just occurred to me that just to kind of break it down a little bit, there's usually, not always, but usually some screening interview, sort of like a preliminary interview, and then usually another interview. How many sort of interviews are there usually when you apply for a job?
So typically, they could be, it depends on the company. Sometimes they'll do 3 to 4 rounds.
Mm,
That's a lot, but sometimes they'll do that. So their talent acquisition team will do the screening, right? They'll just kind of get a feel for who you are, kind of ask you some questions about your background, how long you've been working in your current role, or if you're not currently working, which is the case for a lot of people, try to, try to find out some of your accomplishments and things like that, just to get a feel for, again, your cultural fit
mm.
and your skill for the job.
Mm, okay. So the talent acquisition, meaning the recruiter, sort of does a preliminary interview with the candidates just to make sure they're a good fit. And then the candidates probably, if they pass that, they move on to an interview with the hiring manager.
Correct. And the way I do it, Sue, is I do the same thing. I'll do the phone screen for our clients, right? I'll ask them, tell me a little bit about yourself. I'll go through their resume in detail, right?
Mm,
To kind of get an understanding of what their skill is, what their accomplishments are. And then if I think that they'd be a good fit, then I submit their application to the client, right? But I'm not looking for the perfect candidate. Let me say that. There isn't a perfect candidate. I have met people who may not fit all of the qualifications, but you don't know until you speak to people how well they could fit into a role. So I don't
mm.
just discount people based on what I see on that piece of paper.
Got it. Which makes the interview that much more important
Mhm.
because even if you're not a perfect fit on paper, the interview will could play a huge part in making you still the best candidate for the job.
Correct.
Got it. So what kind of prep work should a, candidate or a job applicant do before an interview?
So the very first thing the candidate needs to do is research the company, right? And I mean, go to their website, find out news about them, um, check their social media. So go beyond their website, check their social media, read any recent news, understand their mission and their industry trends. And then know the job description inside and out so that
Mm,
you can prepare for specific examples that show your past and present skills and abilities and accomplishments that align with that job description. So, one of the things that I used to do when I was looking for a job is I would go through the job description and then write down specific points on the job description and just kind of anticipate the questions that I would get.
absolutely. Because the job description is your best clue
Mhm.
to the kind of candidate that they're looking for. And the more you display the skills and experience and knowledge that is being that is on the job description, the better you probably will do at an interview, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other thing I would say in the preparation and going through the job description and doing the research on the company is to come up with 3 questions that you want to ask. The very
Mm,
least 3 questions, right?
mm,
You can ask the manager, what's your leadership style? Because
mm,
you want to know, can you work within their style? Because
mm,
if not, that's okay,
mm,
right? Find out what keeps them up at night.
mm,
Find out what success looks like in that role. Find out specifics. What's the expectation for the first 30, 60, 90 days?
Mm. Absolutely. So, in doing research about the company that you're applying to work at, um, use that research, whether it's social media, press releases, website, whatever else, in order to come up with, at least three questions that you can ask about the company and about the department, about the job that
Right.
you may be doing, because I assume that also shows that you care about where you work. You want this job, not any job.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
how should you dress for an interview? Remote, like whether it's virtual on Zoom or in person, like how should you dress?
So I always dress professionally for a job interview, right? I've been reading a lot about that lately. So some of best practices are, if you're interviewing at a startup company, they're usually jeans and whatever. So dress business casual,
Mm,
right? If you're going to a finance or services company, you want to dress professionally, right? You want to have on a suit and tie, or a dress, or a suit for a woman, right? You want to dress professional.
got it. I know this sounds a little perhaps well, just to make sure that everyone knows, what would you describe as business casual and what will you describe as professional attire?
So for me, so what I have on a dress right now, you only see the top of me, right? But I have on a dress. This is business casual to me. Some people would do a blouse and a blazer and a pair of slacks, or a sweater and a pair of slacks, or a skirt. For men, it would be a blazer, slacks, and a button-down shirt. Right, that's business casual. Yeah. The thing I didn't mention was what you should look like on camera. You
Mm-hmm.
should be fully dressed, right? And I don't mean, because sometimes people will put dress from the top and then on the bottom be completely dressed, because you never know what might happen. You may have to get up, right?
Mm.
For whatever reason, make sure that you're completely dressed head to toe, and make sure your background is clean. Like, I have a
Mm.
mirror behind me. I
Mm-hmm.
cleaned it before I got on screen,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
right? Make sure your lighting is good.
Because on camera, your background is also part of your dress, your
Also
appearance.
part of your dress and your appearance. And
Got it.
please don't do a background if you don't have a green screen, because then you're fading in and out of the background.
So try to avoid the fake virtual screens.
Yes,
Try to do the
avoid
real
those fake.
physical.
You can blur your background, but I wouldn't go any further than that unless you have green screen. And the truth is, most of us don't, because we're not recording our content creators.
Got it. Absolutely. I agree. I agree. So just to go back to business casual. So business casual is, sort of slacks, not jeans, sort of a dress shirt or some sort of a blouse, maybe a blazer, but usually no tie, right?
Usually no tie for men.
That's business casual. Okay. And so for professional attire, that is sort of the suits, the jacket, the tie, the
Right.
dress, the dress pants, etc. Got it. And the general rule of thumb is if you're applying for sort of a financial corporate setting, dress in professional. If you are applying for sort of a startup or for a more casual workplace, then do business casual.
And do business casual.
Got it. And even when you're like on camera, even if it's just virtual, should you have a suit and tie on, even if it's, a Zoom interview?
I would.
Okay.
I
Okay.
would. I would follow the same practice, even if I were on camera.
Got it. Got it. Because it's very rare someone would say, oh, they overdressed for this job
Right.
interview, right? They usually complain about the person who's underdressed for the job
Right.
interview.
Exactly.
And I love your point about just being presentable head to toe, even when you're on camera, because you never know. If you get that knock on the door, something unplanned happens and you have to stand up, You don't want to be you
All
don't want to have
seen the
to.
commercial with the guy that's in his boxers and he's got a
Right.
shirt.
Absolutely, absolutely. It may be a good laugh, but it may not be best for a job interview. Um, so what are like three most common interview questions that usually gets asked that as a candidate you should kind of prepare for?
Oh my goodness. The very first one is tell me about yourself. Right.
I
And this
hate
is,
that one, I have to admit.
oh,
It's so
I,
obvious, but I hate it. Oh,
I hate
okay.
it too. I
So
hate
one
it.
is tell me about yourself. What's another common one?
Other one is, and I don't know if people still do this, but I think they do, is tell me about your strengths and your weaknesses.
I also don't like that one, but
I
yes,
don't like
strength
that
and
one either.
weaknesses. I hear that too. What about a third common one?
The other one is typically, why do you want to work here?
hmm Why do you want
Or
this
or
job?
s-
What do you
or
want to?
a derivative of that, like, why do you want to work here? Why do you think we should hire you? That kind of question.
Gotcha, gotcha. They are most common. So let's kind of go through each one. Obviously, you want to be true to yourself. Obviously, you want to be honest. Obviously, you don't want to be too short or too lengthy in your
Right.
response. But other than those things aside, what are some good responses to tell me about yourself question?
So tell me about yourself is not your life story, right? It's really highlight your career, your major accomplishments, and things that bring you to that particular opportunity,
Mm,
right? So, for example, I don't know, um, if somebody would have asked me, "Tell me about yourself." Well, I spent 37 years in financial services. I made the pivot a few years ago and purchased a franchise recruiting agency, and I did that because I wanted to bring my skills and ability from financial services and technology to help other people get jobs in that industry.
mm, perfect. Short, to the point.
Short, sweet, consistent, and it tells background, the career path, and I didn't, put any major accomplishments, but you could weave that into that particular story.
Got it. So it's not a they're not really saying, tell me from the moment you were born till now. They're not asking for your life story. Really, when they say, tell me about yourself, they're saying, tell me about yourself as an applicant for this job.
Right.
Got it. So
There
even
have been
if,
times I've said, I'm a problem solver, and
mm,
here's why.
got it,
Right.
got
You
it.
can look into the job description, right, to come up with your tell me some things to weave into the tell me about yourself.
Got it. Perfect. So if the job description says you need to be able to think strategically, for example, then when they say, tell me about yourself, you may want to weave that in.
Correct.
And then what if they do say, well, tell me about yourself as a person?
So tell me about yourself as a person. You could talk about things like your hobbies, your volunteer activities, even as a parent, right? I'm not a parent, but like I'm thinking about my sister. She could say, "Well, I'm very family oriented. I have an
Mm,
adult son and four grandchildren, and I like to
mm,
spend a lot of time with them and make memories with them." Because
mm,
she does, they they watch her cook, they help her cook, she takes them on special vacations. So, she could weave that into it. For me, I would answer that question. I would say, as a person, I am an award-winning and multi-best-selling author. I like to write. I've been writing since I was a child. I'm a serial note taker. So whenever I'm on the phone with somebody or in conversation, the first thing I do is pull out a notebook and a pen and I start taking notes because it helps me commit things to memory. So, what I did was tell you about who I am, but also told you about a skill that I have.
just don't ever forget it is a job interview
It
after
is a
all.
job interview.
After all. Perfect. I love it. So the next common question, which was tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. What are some good ways to answer that?
So be honest, right? Don't make stuff up because the truth is you'll sound like you're making it up, right? So find a strength of yours that matches the job description. Let's go back to your example about being a strategic thinker. Well, I'm a strategic thinker, and here's why. Give an example, right? I'm a problem solver, and give an example, right? Another, if you wanted to describe a weakness, you could say, and I don't think people should ask that question, by the way,
Agreed.
but it gets asked, right? You could
Yep.
say, I used to be somebody that overcommitted,
Mm.
right? And now I've learned how to prioritize, and I've learned how to push things, and learn how to say no when I don't have the bandwidth.
So, share your real strengths. So, maybe it's I'm really good with communicating with people. I am able to think strategically. When someone assigns me a task, I'm able to kind of know what to do immediately from kind of A to Z. Whatever it is, try to tailor some of your strengths to what's in the job description.
Exactly. Exactly.
Even if they
Exactly.
ask you, what is your weakness? Try to find a weakness that you've learned from.
Correct. Correct.
Um, how many strengths and how many weaknesses should you share? If they say, well, tell me about your strengths and weaknesses, how many strengths and weaknesses should you share? I assume not 10, right?
Yeah, definitely not 10. Um, maybe one or two. I would stick to the one, because what happens is you don't want to find yourself rambling, right?
Mm,
Stick to the one.
hmm. Got it. So kind of like one of my major strengths is, and kind of describe that one, and then
Correct. My
say
major
the
strength
weakness that
is
I've really got it, and a weakness that I have really learned from is this. Kind of stick to the
correct.
one. Perfect. Perfect. Um, it's funny because I think sometimes candidates try to oversell. So they'll be like, I have 20 strengths, I have no weaknesses. Then that doesn't come across as being sort of genuine, right?
Correct. Right. Right.
So the third most common question you usually hear people get asked was, why do you want to work here? Why do you want this job? What are some good answers for that?
So this goes back to your original research, right? It
Mm,
goes back to what you found out about the company and how the company values meet your own. So you
mm,
can answer the question like, and not just about the job, not because I want this job, but because things like, I looked at your mission statement and it really fits who I am as a person and my values, and here's why.
mm,
Right?
mm,
I believe that my skills and my ability can fit well with your company, and here's why. Here's an example, right? Give an example of that.
got it. So, use the research that you did on the company, use the thorough read through that you did of the job description, and use that in your answer. I want to work for this company because based on what I saw, on your social media, it feels like a really, community oriented organization. Based on your website and some of the news releases, it looks like there's some really new cool things happening, stuff like that.
I was talking to I checked a reference last week,
Mm,
and the person I was talking to made a transition from managing nightclubs into being a managing partner of an up and coming tech firm. And I
mm,
said, "Oh wow."
mm,
And based on his signature, in the email that I received from the candidate, I went to the website and it was intriguing to me. And
mm,
so after I checked the reference, I started asking him about that. Right.
mm,
So again, why do you want to work here? Do the research, talk to other people, right?
mm.
That you may know that may have worked there, may have had some interaction, somebody that might have an inside track that can tell you. And I'm not talking about things like that are proprietary. I'm not
Right,
talking about that.
right.
Um, but find out and use that in your why do you want to work here?
Absolutely. And it doesn't hurt to practice these questions and answering them ahead of time because even if they don't ask you those three questions, the prepared answers that you have, you could utilize in bits and pieces to whatever else they may ask you, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is where, so practice and have practice with a friend, right? And here's where Zoom comes in handy, right? If your interview is virtual, then turn your Zoom camera on and have your friend on Zoom so they can
Mm,
tell you what you look like, what your background looks like, what your sound, how your sound is coming through, all of those things, right? So utilize the technology. Like before we got prepared, I turned on Zoom. I wanted to see my lighting. I wanted to see how much space between my head and the camera, all of those things.
absolutely. Well, first, if I remember correctly, Zoom is free for everyone. And you could
Yes,
do a call up to 40 minutes and that's free. So you could, practice with a friend on Zoom. You could even record it and then view it
correct.
back yourself. That way, because what you look like on the mirror, in the mirror may not be what you how you come across on Zoom, right?
Absolutely.
Or
Like the
Microsoft
strange thing
Teams or
is on Zoom, right? The and I keep going back and forth, is the first thing we want to do is look at the screen when technically we should be looking at that little light on our laptop, which is the camera, right? So that we're always facing forward, right?
right.
It's a learned behavior, but you have to practice it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's say, how do you recover from giving a bad answer to a question, or if you find yourself rambling or you messed up a little bit, how do you recover from that?
You know what? You just say, you know what, let me start again. Asking let me just start again. I realized I was rambling.
Hmm.
Let me give you a more concise response to that question.
Beautiful. Because that
Or
also shows. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, or one of the things that I've done when I know I gave a bad answer is at the end of the interview, the next question you ask them is, do you have any hesitations or any concerns about my abilities?
Mm,
And typically they will answer. And here's
mm,
your opportunity to restate that answer. You can say,
mm.
well, you asked me whatever the question was. Let me restate my answer.
I love it. I love it. So if you found that you gave an answer that is not the best or it's not the answer you wanted to give, you can say, or if you find yourself rambling or going off track, you can say, actually, let me start again and let me give you a more succinct answer. Absolutely. Or at the end of the interview, when they say, do you have any questions for me? You can say, do you have any hesitations about my qualifications for this particular role? Based on their answer, this is a time for you to reshape, re-say, or say, or give a different response to a question that they asked earlier.
Sometimes they will say no, but
Mm,
that's not the opportunity to just take no as an answer. Go back,
mm,
reframe the answer to the question that you didn't think you answered very well,
mm-hmm.
and then give, a reason why you think they should hire you. So
Gotcha.
don't just
So,
take no and go, "Oh, okay, I messed that up." No, use the opportunity.
eh, so I think what you're saying reminds me that don't forget you also control a part of this interview.
You
You
do.
don't have to only, kind of be the follower in the interview. You could take some time to actually say, I would love to answer an earlier question again. Or even if they say, if you ask them, do you have any hesitations about my qualifications for this role? They're like, no. You can say, that's great to hear. I would like to just revisit that question and just give you a more succinct answer.
Yes, absolutely.
Got it. So you don't want to dominate the job interview, but don't forget you have some control.
Correct.
Got it.
Because it's not like we stated in the beginning, this is a two-way conversation.
Right. They're checking you out, you're checking them out.
Correct.
Absolutely. Um, what are your I like three. So what are your like top three tips and advice you have for people as they head into an interview?
My number one tip is be yourself, right? Just be who you are. Show up as who you are, right? That you Cuz listen, the truth of the matter is it's hard enough to be you, so don't try and show up as somebody that you're not, right? Just be who you are. Let your own personality, your energy come through. It's specifically important on a virtual interview to allow your personality, your energy to come across in the interview. I think the next thing is to be confident in your skills, in your abilities, and speak to them. Yeah, just and I think the other thing is, and we've just talked about it, is to recognize that even though you're being interviewed, you're also interviewing that company to make sure that their mission and their values fit the person and the place that you want to work and can help you grow in your career. And
Mm,
if they're not, that is completely okay.
mm, mm. Got it. Um, I just have a quick follow-up. I'm hesitating on how best to ask this because on one hand, you do want to be yourself,
Right.
but on the other hand, you're trying to show your best self, right?
So
So,
let me clarify. I get where you're going, right? I get where you're going. Be yourself, but be your professional self, right?
mm,
Because we we all have a professional self and we have our girlfriends hanging out self.
mm,
I don't want you to bring that girlfriend hanging out self to the interview. I want you to bring your polished professional self. What I mean by being yourself is not to compromise who you are in the interview and show up inauthentic, is what I mean.
mm.
Right? So, yeah, I get where you're going with.
Uh, understood, understood. So be yourself, but be your best self because after all, it is a job interview.
I had a young lady, I was a hiring manager, and I had a young lady, and I don't know if it was cultural because we were both African American. I don't know what this was about. But she sat down in the chair, and then she started to speak to me, and this is where the girlfriend hanging out example came from. She started to speak to me like I was her girlfriend.
As opposed to the person doing the interview.
Absolutely. So I stopped the interview and I asked her, "Do you mind if I coach you?" And I said to her, whenever you approach an interview, it doesn't matter who's sitting behind the desk, whether they look like you or not. You always want to be professional.
Good advice. Good advice. Be comfortable, but remember you're at a job interview.
Absolutely.
Um, I want to like cover little things like let's talk about in person. um, you know, little things that people don't tell you. I often say things like, wear your best shoes that makes you feel confident, but make sure you can walk in them, right? Or, wear your best suit, but make sure you're also comfortable in it. Make sure just so that you don't feel uncomfortable. Because sometimes you may have to walk a little bit. Sometimes they take you up some stairs to get to the room that you're interviewing in, or anything like that. So wear stuff that makes you look professional for a job interview, but that you also feel comfortable in. So, do you have other tips like that? Like, should you shake someone's hand? What about eye contact? Should you walk alongside them, behind them? Should you take the water when they offer it to you? Um, Stuff like that. Like any little things like that that people don't usually talk about.
Yeah. So, in terms of, what you wear, try it on.
Yeah,
Right? Make sure it's comfortable to you. Right? Try it on. I love the shoe example though, because I'll give you an example. I went to a job interview and I think I had on like a 5-inch platform shoe. I could walk in them, but it was the going up the stairs that was
yeah,
tricky. I'm like, ooh,
right.
don't ever wear these again. Um, in terms of um, the other little things, shake someone's hand and be firm,
Mm,
right? Be firm with the handshake. And definitely walk alongside them.
mm.
Um, what else could I say about all the little things? So show up on time, at least 10 minutes in advance. Don't show up 30 minutes early because now you're sitting in front of the receptionist, the admin, and she may or he may feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't do things like um, get up and ask, well, when am I going to be seen? Because you don't know what she's saying on the other end of the phone.
Right.
Um, this somebody said this, and I thought this was interesting. Is make sure your car is washed if you're driving to the interview. You don't know who's coming out of the building, who sees you coming
Wow.
out. Make sure your car. I don't know. I would have never thought about that, but I
Yeah.
heard someone say it. Make sure your car is washed. In terms of your shoes, make sure your shoes are polished. I don't do we shine shoes anymore? I mean, I don't
I don't
know.
think so, but make sure they're clean.
Make sure they're clean. Um, yeah, and spend the time that you're waiting in the waiting area to look over your notes, right? I take notes.
Mhm,
I told you I'm a serial note taker, so I
mhm,
would have already taken notes
mhm.
with the questions I want to ask and all those things. I would be reviewing my notes and just making sure take a couple of deep breaths so because you're nervous on an interview, right? So I would just take a couple of deep breaths, do some breathing exercises to make sure I'm as calm as I can be when I walk into the room or I meet that person.
Absolutely. And also if you feel comfortable enough, if you're done reviewing your notes because you're a little early, look around. What is physically what does the space look like? That also gives you a certain vibe of the company. So I think all these tips that we're saying is do as much of them as you can. You don't have to do all of them. But it's a good reminder that there's more to a job interview just than your qualifications, experience, and knowledge. They make decisions based on all sorts of things, like limp handshake to, that person was really impatient, or, whatever. They had no questions about, the company, or there is so much more to a job interview than just your ability to do the job, right?
Right. Send a thank you note.
Mm.
Please do that. Send
Email?
the thank you note. You can email one. I just recently read an article where someone brought a handwritten thank you note to the interview. I kind of like that because the
Wow.
art of greeting cards is, everything's online now. I kind of like that. But then, I might be old school, but definitely send an email with that thank you. I actually had someone that didn't make it to the second round of an interview because they didn't send a thank you note.
I've also worked with some hiring managers that said, well, they must not want the job because they didn't bother sending me a thank you note. So even if you think you did great in the job interview, even if you think you did horribly at the job interview,
Right.
still send a thank you note. And
And the
what should be in a thank you email, let's say?
So in the thank you note, you should restate your qualifications and why you want to work for the company. You don't want to ramble on, right? So keep it within the 250 words. Um, so don't ramble, but be succinct, no more than 250 words. It takes a lot of learning to get that done. Um, use Chat GPT to help you be concise.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, but make sure you definitely send that, restate your qualifications and why you wanna work with the company.
So perfect, perfect. Um, any difference in we've been talking already about the difference between virtual job interviews versus in-person job interviews. Any different advice you would give for virtual versus in-person?
Just kinda the things we've been talking about, right? And check your technology. I can't state that enough. Test your technology. the day before. Don't wait till that morning to do it. Test your technology. Wipe your camera off because we never even think about wiping our camera down. I kept wondering a couple of weeks ago, I did a live and I turned my camera on and I'm going, oh, it's awfully fuzzy. I would have thought this is a new laptop, because it was fuzzy.
It was the camera,
You
not the
take one
internet
of these
connection.
little eyeglass things or, and just if you don't wear eyeglasses, take a napkin or, a washcloth and just kind of wipe it down and I'm like, oh wow. Uh, clean your glasses,
Mm,
right? Clean because you can see the lenses on my glasses, right? Um, and I didn't realize because I'm always looking through fingerprints on my glasses, right? Be honest. And I didn't realize till I turned my Zoom camera on, like, "Oh, wow, you can see the fingerprints on my glasses." So clean your glasses and practice with your Zoom camera on so
mm,
you can actually see what you look like.
mm,
Because Sue, you're right. What you look like in the mirror is not the same as what you look like on camera,
mm, mm.
right? And if you have dogs,
Right.
I know people don't wanna put their dogs away, but make sure and children, make sure everybody in the house knows I'm in an interview.
Got it. Got it. Don't disturb me if it could be helped for about an hour
Right. My
until I come
cat's
down.
usually running through here screaming at me. I don't know where she is. She's being behaved today. But, so virtual brings a whole lot of different things, right? People have children and pets and the doorbell rings, so just make sure you're in the most quiet place in your home as possible.
It.
And
Um,
I'd say again, don't use one of those backgrounds if you don't have a green screen because you fade in and out. You can
Gotcha.
blur your background, but don't use one of those fake ones.
Got it. Love it. Um, I would also just say for those who, maybe you just can't find a good space in your house for a virtual job interview, then go to a library, book a room, book a study room, test out the internet and your computer there and see if that works better for you. Maybe go to a friend's house, say, hey, can I use your space for a little bit? Whatever you have to do to kind of present the best version of yourself for that job interview. um, I do want to talk a little bit about, just people's different personalities and abilities. Some people don't feel comfortable making eye contact. Some people, may need different accommodations for the interview because of their physical abilities, or maybe there's a cultural barrier. Shaking hands may not be something that is done in your culture or anything like that. What about when what is expected of you is more than is not what you can deliver because that is not who you are.
Right. I would say that to the recruiter that reached out to you. If you need special accommodations, I would say that, right? If you have challenges getting up and down stairs, I would say that. Um, if you need your thing about you don't shake hands in your culture, make sure that you make those things known so it doesn't come across like you're standoffish and things like that. In terms of making eye contact, it's a learned behavior. Um, I'm very much an introvert. And so making eye contact in the beginning was very difficult for me, but I had to learn how to do it, right? Practice with somebody, right? And I'm not we're not saying making eye contact means like you're looking at somebody and you never blink or you never look away. But what we are saying is, make eye contact when you're answering a question. It's okay to look away, look at your notes or whatever, but make sure that you are making eye contact. And maybe, you know what? I just thought about something. Maybe that may be a sign of disrespect in someone else's culture.
Mm,
Again, I would make all those things known, right?
mm,
So you don't come across as standoffish, disrespectful, or whatever it is somebody might perceive you coming across as.
So instead of them making assumptions about you, disclose those to the recruiter ahead of time, because ultimately the recruiter does want you to, succeed, right? I mean, for the most part, they do want you to succeed, and look your best and be your best during the interview with the hiring manager. So the more you could sort of share with the recruiter about certain accommodations you may need, or certain cultural or religious things to abide by, the more they could be of support to you.
Absolutely. I know for me, when I'm working with a candidate, I phone screen them, but I also want them when they get to the interview part, I want them to succeed. So I spend the time doing exactly what we're doing, right? Preparing my candidate for the interview, sending them links, right, to the client website, telling them everything I know about this particular client, helping, coaching them on how to answer questions. Because at the end of the day, I want them to get hired.
Yeah, absolutely. Oof. So we covered a lot today, and I can't thank you enough for all this wonderful information. Um, I do have a follow-up question that I have, and then I'm going to ask for sort of any general advice that you may want to also cover. But talk to me about salary. Should you negotiate? Should you tell them what you're expecting? How do you answer the salary question? Any advice you have about the money aspect of job interviews?
So if it's asked, because typically they sometimes they won't ask because they already so for my candidates, I already know what the salary range is, right? And we've already had that conversation. And when I submit a candidate to the client, they already know what my candidate is looking for in
Gotcha.
terms of a salary, right? In some cases, salary's not, or in a lot of cases, salary's not posted. So here's another research item, right? Search the average salary range for that particular role and for somebody with your experience, right? That's public knowledge. So you can, I'm sorry, that's public information that you can find out. And so I would ask somewhere in the mid range,
Mm,
right? So say the salary was, 125 to 130.
mm,
Right? Maybe let me give you a better number, 120 to 135,
mm-hmm.
right? I would be in that 125 range,
Gotcha.
right? Because you don't wanna price yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went in for an interview one time, and I knew what the range was, and I went into the mid-range, and when I got the offer, they offered me the top of the range.
Mm,
Let me also state this. Do not give your notice to your current employer without that offer letter in hand.
mm. Don't assume you have the job until you have the offer letter in your hands or in your
Absolutely.
email box. Not
Absolutely.
don't resign based on a good feeling you have.
Or based on the phone call that you get, oh, we want to offer you the job and this is what we want to give you in terms of salary and whatever. Until that offer letter is in your inbox, do not resign.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Because I too have seen it where there's a verbal offer and then it doesn't happen. It doesn't come through. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So for salary, I'm hearing, do you research? Have that kind of discussion with the recruiter before you even go to the hiring manager whenever possible. If you're not sure of the salary and the hiring manager is asking you, um, uh, when in doubt, go for the mid range.
You can also negotiate,
Mm,
right? So they make you an offer, they come in lower than where you had expected. You can negotiate.
mm,
Well, can we, negotiate things like Can we do, and here's the reason again, you asked the 30, 60, 90-day question. Can
Mm,
we reevaluate after 90 days?
mm. Reevaluate the salary after 90 days. Yep.
Absolutely. One of the
Mhm.
things I had done in one of my roles is I went in on the lower end of the salary, but I negotiated a title.
Mm, mhm,
So I said, okay, because I knew what I wanted for money, but I felt like at this stage of my career, the title means more to me. You have to know what's more important to you, right? The title was more important to me than the money,
mm,
right? Because
mhm,
I knew that I could live off of the lower end of the salary.
mm.
So I went in at the lower end and negotiated the title and was given the title on in my they revised my offer letter and had to put the title in.
Gotcha. And this is something you would usually do with the recruiter when they say, we like to offer you this job at this salary, this job title. If it's not what you were hoping for, maybe you can say, can we negotiate the salary after 90 days? Or is there any wiggle room in that salary offer? Or my title is director. Is it possible that it could be a senior director title? Or can I get an additional week of, PTO vacation time? Or
Yeah,
just you could negotiate a little bit more, and if they say no, they say no. If they say yes, great, then you have to decide.
right. Exactly.
All right, one last question for me before I turn it to you for any last advice, which is, should you follow up? Because I'm hearing people, you apply for a job, you interview, and then the company ghosts you, or you don't hear for months. When or when should you follow up, and when should you not follow up?
So I say follow up,
Okay.
right? Typically, the hiring manager will say something like, well, we're interviewing other candidates this week and we should get back to you next week.
Mm,
Okay. So next week, maybe not Monday, but Tuesday, I would
right.
follow up.
Okay.
Um, yeah, definitely follow up.
Okay.
Um, let me talk about this thing around ghosting.
Mm.
It is awful,
Mhm.
right? It's not a good look for the company. A couple of reasons, right? Reputational risk. People talk. I've posted about this on my LinkedIn page, right? That people talk, and up to now, nobody has outright named a company, but the way people are, if you watch the language and the people that are disgruntled, somebody at some point is going to name a company, right? And I get that, things happen and recs get pulled, or, maybe the company wants to take a different direction, but don't leave people hanging,
Mm. Mm.
at least send some communication. Right? I typically, I'll send somebody an email and say, hey, I haven't heard any feedback, just wanted you to know.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
My next communication is I pick up the phone to talk to people.
Mm.
"Listen, I just wanted to let you know I haven't heard anything yet."
Absolutely.
You
So
know, always in communication with people,
so
even if they
anybody,
don't get the job.
and if absolutely, it is, we're talking about people, and applying for a job is vulnerable. And you're hoping and wishing that role works out. And so, if anybody's tuning in from a company, or if you're a hiring manager, or if you're a recruiter, please don't ghost candidates. Follow up with any update, or let them know there is no update, or let them know that they didn't get the job. But tell them something, because it's not a good look for the company. And trust me, people talk. So if you are the candidate, though, if they say they should have a decision in a couple of weeks, follow up maybe in about 2.5 weeks. Should you follow up with the recruiter or with the hiring manager, or both?
So it depends so typically you may have the hiring manager's information. Follow up with them, send them an email.
Okay, great.
I would follow up with both.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So,
Um, Go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. As a sub, if you don't hear anything, follow up from the recruiter or from the hiring manager, and you happen to have the hiring manager contact info, follow up with both, and and then leave it alone. Follow up again.
So depending on the feedback, right? If you get feedback, oh, we're still reevaluating, we'll have something in, follow up within that next time frame.
Okay.
If you don't get a response, I would follow up again in a couple of days because you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe their inbox is full, maybe they were on
Something.
PTO, whatever. I would follow up again. If I didn't get any feedback the second time, I would reach out one other time and then leave it alone because there's obviously something happening in the background that you can't control.
Got it.
I also want to address this too because we see it a lot on specifically on LinkedIn where people are talking about being ghosted and whatever and you see some language that's like, you know what, guys? I get it. I get the frustration. I get that this is a tight job market, but back off of some of the complaining because guess what? I'm a recruiter and I see that. You're not the person I'm going to call,
Mm, mm, mm.
right? You may have all of the background and the skill, but typically you're not if I'm looking for a candidate and I see you're open to work, but then I see your post and you've spent the last 6 posts complaining, you're probably not the person I'm gonna call, right? So I just want us to recognize that this thing falls on both sides, right? Companies ghost, candidates complain, but candidates also ghost. I would say to the candidate, don't do that either. If you decided to withdraw your candidacy, say that,
Mm,
right?
mm,
One of the things I learned very early on from my parents is never burn a bridge because you never know when you may need to go back across that bridge. Right. So and it goes the same way with the recruiter, with the company, and with the candidates. Don't burn the bridge. If you've decided to withdraw, let them know you withdrawn. Don't have people calling you over and over and you never respond.
mm.
So it's a two-way street. I get that
Absolutely.
it's tough. Trust me, I'm in this all day, every day. I see it. It's tough.
It is tough. It is tough. Um, okay. So I can't thank you enough for joining us
Ew.
here. Any last tips, advice for candidates, for job applicants?
But it's tough for you. It's tough for the companies that are hiring people. Um, I all I can say is, be patient. There's a job out there for you. Reach into your network, people that you know. Reach out to recruiters that are trying to connect with you, right? Practice your interview skills. Be ready for when that opportunity comes. Upskill. Take some LinkedIn learning courses and things like that so that you stay, marketable because long-term unemployment is a real fact these days, right?
So,
So stay marketable. And maybe
abs-
think about, making a pivot in what you thought you wanted. Reevaluate your skills, and maybe your skills may fit someplace else.
all great advice. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank
Heidi.
you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. If you want to connect with Heidi, her contact information is in the description below. Thank you for joining us. It was all about how to have a fantastic job interview. And if you want any other type of videos as it relates to jobs and careers, like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.